I'm Sheila Hamilton. Welcome back to Beyond Well. This is a program for people who want to learn more about their interior lives. And every single week, we do a little bit more to add one more tool to the emotional toolbox. I'm joined every week by Dr. Jenna Lejeune and Dr. Brian Goff. Hello, you two.
Hey, Sheila.
Brian has a really fast new car.
Well, it's not mine yet. And I hope it won't be too fast, because then I won't be able to afford it. My insurance will go up.
I love the fact that it's all electric, though. It just makes me hopeful for the future. I don't know. Less hopeful than driverless cars, however. You know.
Right around the corner.
Exactly. I know. It's happening. I think this is the podcast that all of us have been waiting for. Because Scott Erickson, when we saw your video, what?
Oh, I'm just going to take that compliment, save it for later.
Soak it up.
Wow.
I'm serious. When all of us saw your video, we were like, what the hell is going on? And where has this guy been all of my life? Honestly.
In obscurity. That's where I've been.
But
my niece in California, she's going to love this, Shelly. Shelly is a big fan. And she said, Scott is actually in Portland, and he's doing this show. You got to go. And so I grabbed one of my kiddos.
Yeah.
And I came down, and then I chased you down through the crowd and said, I know you don't know me, but I got this podcast, and we got to talk, and you need to do this.
No, I remember that moment. Yeah, for sure.
Were you thinking, I wonder if this guy's stable when he pounced on you like that?
No. I think we had a long conversation for a bit. It wasn't super quick. I think you told me what you did, and we talked for a bit. And
Yeah. Because I started out thinking that you were doing something that was grounded in religion. It's not that at all. It's about spirituality. It's about being awake.
Yeah.
But it's definitely from your own personal perspective.
Yeah. For me, what's helpful, I had to define these terms, spirituality and religion.
Yeah.
And for me, spirituality means making what's invisible visible. And then religion is the rituals, practices, rhythms you develop around that visibility. And those can become very identity oriented. So a lot of times when we're discussing with religion with people, we're discussing about how they find their own safety in the world.
Yeah.
But the spirituality is it's a little bit more mysterious, and it's kind of like there's all these hidden things that we don't know how to really talk about, but people throughout we have a tradition of spiritualists or people who are writers and monks and priests and all different kinds of, or just even crazy people, mystics out in the wilderness, who are describing these kind of hidden life that's affecting their outward life, and so I wanted to make something about that. So my show is called Say Yes, a Liturgy of Not Giving Up on Ourselves, and I say, Carl Jung, as you probably know, he said that spirituality and psychotherapy are almost the same thing. At least I heard this quote somewhere.
Holy crap, that's me being
annoying.
annoying.
Look at that. That's okay.
Oops.
She's a professional.
We're all professional
it's
here.
not, honestly. Oh, my God. This is real life. This is dealing with my mother at the same time. I'm doing a podcast.
Speaking of spiritual,
Yeah,
a sign.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
First
Carl
of all,
Jung. Carl Jung was saying,
Yeah, I heard this quote. He said, maybe somebody quoted him, or I don't know if it's an exact quote, but he said, spirituality and psychotherapy are almost the same thing. And when I started kind of taking notes on my life and what was happening, I was like, these are definitely mental health practices that I'm doing, but they're also tied with kind of a spiritual perspective. And I was like, are those separate? Do they have to be compartmentalized? And why? Actually, maybe it'd be better to present them intertwined.
Wow.
Yeah.
Honestly, everything I've ever thought was wrong about the mental health industry you just described.
Really?
Because it feels like it extracts a lot of spirituality from it to go through the process of what they ask people to do. Not what you guys do. What you guys do is exactly in line.
You're obviously ahead of the game.
This is everything that's wrong with you, Jenna.
No. But because I had a very disastrous run-in with the mental health industry and the way it was, it took apart the personhood from the person I loved and said, you're sick. and you're over here and you're different from other people right now. And it felt so wrong. And you just described to me how you piece yourself back together. And actually what we try to do here, which is say we all have these issues, some degree or another.
Yeah.
Yours is not giving up on yourself means that you've probably had the thought before of giving up on yourself. So you're dealing at a different resonance, right?
Yeah. I have had, my first kind of real breakdown, I actually worked at a church as a pastor, and I burned out. And my burnout for me actually it was actually a couple weeks after Easter, so close to like where we're at now, which, you're doing a lot nonstop. And then I was
the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And I was just like in the office. We all used to work at this one big table. And I was just sitting at the table on my laptop. The way we do the Lord's work is on our laptops. And I just heard this inaudible sound of like breaking glass, and just kind of everything that held me together just started falling apart. And I just started crying at my computer. Wow. And Paul, a coworker, was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I'm really tired, and I don't really know why I get up in the morning anymore." And my counselor, therapist at the time, who I started going to, she's like, "Sound like you had you started having a depressive episode brought about by burnout." And so I went into like depression for a good year and a half, and ended up leaving that job for a number of different reasons, but ended up working for this large company which had really good health care. And so it gave me a chance to like not like be able to go to work and then leave it there. And it gave me good health care that I could start going to a counselor for the first time and
spend more time looking at the stuff that's invisible.
Yeah. And those were really helpful tools and a helpful time. And then I think I've always been interested in that. I mean, I think my work as a creative is like you're always, what's the thing behind the thing behind the thing? And I do find myself very interested in like, should I keep making art or should I go into like psychology and somehow? Because just like how we work is really fascinating. But I definitely, I think as I've talked to a few doctors or therapists who've come to my show, they've been like, "This is great. We talk about all this stuff in what we do." And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not presenting it as a clinician. I'm presenting it as a person who goes to therapy." Like I'm like this is what I've learned by doing this, and I'm presenting it as an artist, not as like, this is my job.
Just a little clue, the clinician and the person who goes to therapy are often the same person.
That's right.
I know.
Dirty little secret of ours.
It's true.
At least the good ones are.
I love how you use the word liturgy. So talk about the origin of that word and why it works in the form that you're presenting this art.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a storyteller, so can I take a couple steps back?
Yeah.
So I got asked to speak at, there's this group called Christians in Visual Arts, started in the 70s. They were created, it was started to help like churches have art on their walls, and they're good, and they're a great, delightful group. I got asked to speak just a small little part at this conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I went there, and I'm at this conference, and it was just like academic after academic getting up and like basically reading their like paper. And there was such this like, this is so important, because it's true and it's valuable. And I just wanted to be like, hi, are there any crazy people here? This is an artist conference, right? Like, because I don't know who you are, but I'm not an artist because I'm like I'm a haunted person. Are there any other haunted people here? Like, I wanted Doc Brown like character from Back to the Future to be like, "Hi, I make this stuff, and I just got out of the woods. Here's what I made. Thank you." I like, because that feels more like the tribe I'm part of, not this like we wrote papers about why this is important. And then that led me to go, actually, I feel that way about most of church. Isn't it wild? It feels like when I engage with these like Hebrew scriptures that they're about really wild and interesting and dynamic situations, but it just gets watered down or made safe in a lot of ways. And so then I was like, we make all these so liturgy just means the work of the people. That's all it means. It's like it's the process of making a form for like a service or a ritual. It's like, and really everything's invented. You can do whatever you want. But we were part of a long tradition of other human beings who've been practicing this. And so we know when we sing together, that does something to us. And so that's why there's this tradition of singing. But what we do is we confuse the mechanics for the essence. The mechanics are just there to help us get to the essence. But mechanics you can control. And so people become obsessed about mechanics. And if the mechanics don't bring you to the essence anymore, like you need to move on and change that. And I just started going, what if, I don't know, I just was like, I want to make like weird liturgies. I want to make, I've never been to a church service about depression. So my first kind of one-man show is called We Are Not Troubled Guests, which is a David Whyte line. We're talking about poet David Whyte. And it's called The Gift of Your Existential Crisis. And so I made this kind of storytelling night about what happens when how you think things work falls apart, and then something unexpected changes your perspective on everything. And I had like a mystical experience. That's kind of the end of my shows. I share this weird thing that changed my life. And so then this one was like, I want to make something that's about like a liturgy of suicide, because I was like, I've never been to a church service on suicide.
Yeah.
You know, I've never gone to like a Catholic Compline service and they're like, "Dear God, thank you for the gift of life. We will not put a noose around our neck." You know, like I was like, are there any songs or services about this? And yet I know I had had to confront my own conversations with suicide. And I say this in the show. I was like, there's a spectrum of dying. Like you can give up and die in a lot of simple ways. Like I have a relative who's just spent spent most of his life watching 5 hours of television a night. And now he's in his 70s and he's like, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. And it's like, you could have. You had time.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, but what was the thing that made you shut down and go, I'm looking for something to numb the pain or distract me.
In my world, when people do these things that aren't really moving toward anything they care about, but it's just trying to get away from stuff they don't like, it's lost on them that when you try to get away from the things that you don't like, you're getting away from everything. And you detach from that. It's kind of a package deal.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you're getting lost watching 5 hours of TV a night because you're haunted by insecurities or anxieties or whatever, then you're also missing the opportunity to do something that feels meaningful.
It's also just, I think you touch on this, that there's so many ways in our modern society to do it. It's drugs, it's Netflix, it's drinking, it's texting incessantly. It's like the technology has given us more and more ways to actually not be present with ourselves, right?
Yeah. Because it's horrifying when you get with yourself and you're like, it's like this tidal wave of unconversed conversations are like waiting for you. Like, we've been waiting to talk to you. You're like, no, oh no, where's my phone? Distraction. Yeah. And so the catalyst for me was my wife came to me. So I'm Scott the Painter on Instagram, social media. Because like when I'm Scott Erickson, I was trying to find like internet real estate, and there's like a lot of Scott Ericksons in the United States, so it was all taken. So I picked this painter tag, and my wife was like, you are a painter, but I think you're actually a lot more than that. This is a few years ago, and that just like hit me, because she was like, I think that label's limiting you. And I had to like think about what I was trying to get through to in art making, and I realized that I was actually probably a lot more of a performing artist than I was of like just a studio artist. And my like creative hero, this is all in the show. My creative hero is like a year younger than me, and I had this experience where I put my kids to bed one night, and then I walked into our living room and I just found that I was like crying, not because I had a magical moment with my kids, but I just was crying, and I tried to stop myself and I couldn't. And I just sobbed. I went into my bathroom and I sat on my toilet for like an hour, and I just cried. And I realized what was happening is like I was grieving the loss of a dream, which is I wish I would have known myself who I wanted to be at 18, and I'm just figuring it out at 39. And I'm grieving the loss of like those 20 years. But what I was being confronted with was like, well, I could start now. And then this is when the voice of giving up or fear, I said, came to me and was like, nobody gives a shit about a 40-year-old trying to become a performance artist. And I was like, that sounds really legit. It sounds embarrassing to watch somebody who's midway through their life try to do something like that, because it seems like a younger person's game or something. So I actually started listening. I remember a moment, because I just had lots of self-talk. And I just went, what is your argument? And I wrote down kind of what I was hearing myself say to myself.
Wow.
Which was like these 3 things. And I said, these must be the doorways that I need to go through, because these are the things that keep getting said over. These are the things that are slamming in my face. So these are the things I have to develop pivots or practices against.
Talk about those 3 things, because I think that they are likely things that a lot of people have to go through.
Yeah. The way that I would phrase them is nothing's going to change. Nothing new will ever happen. So the same miserable day, the same miserable feeling, that's going to be your reality for the rest of your life. And just thinking about doing that for like 40 more years sounds uninviting. So, and then you suck and are ugly. It gets really personal for
That's a
reason.
twofer.
I know. And I say this in the show, you suck and are ugly. And what it's saying is like, there's something wrong with you. You don't have what it takes to get to where you'd like to go. And the thing that's wrong with you is actually you're not in control of changing.
Mm.
There's something about you can't change. And that's always going to prevent you from getting to where you hope to go. Mm. And then the last one I say, dying is better than living, which is, I think a lot of it is, and I propose this, like, dying's on a spectrum. It can mean to like numb yourself, but it also can be like, and just want to kick out. And at my lowest moments, I don't think I'll kill myself. I don't plan on doing it, but I've had days where if I was crossing a street and I was going to see that a bus was going to hit me, I'd be like, oh, thank God.
Oh, man.
I've
heard that so many times before.
Yeah,
didn't you say, Brian, like it's so common that it's like 1 in 3 will say in the confines
like
of an
that.
office that it's that common to have that. I wouldn't shoot myself, but man, if that bus could take me out, I'd be so grateful.
Well, 1 in 3 people seriously consider taking their life in an active way. So I have to assume sort of that passive, like if I got a cancer diagnosis, I wouldn't try to stop it. Or here comes a bus, I won't move too fast.
Yeah.
And there's something I don't know how to control, and I'm just trying to find a way to control it.
Jenna, talk about that, because Brian's
Yes.
said before that there is some way of like existential avoidance is the biggest, like I really don't want to have to deal with that, and so I'm just going to check out. But there's all these different degrees before you get there that I don't think people might recognize as suicidality.
Yeah, I mean, this idea of experiential avoidance, it's not that, we're taught that that's actually what we're supposed to do. Like, our culture teaches us that if you're experiencing some pain or some suffering, you're supposed to do something to get rid of it or avoid it. And so it's not like, of course that's what people are doing, because like that's what the message has been, including the message in most of mental health. And so we're like scrambling around all trying to be good little boys and good little girls doing the thing that we're told that we're supposed to do, which is if you want to live a good life, it starts by feeling good. And kind of from the perspective that Brian and I come from, we sort of start ass backwards, maybe. Like, we're much more interested in helping people. Like, what would it mean for you to live well? And then, if you're living well, if you're living a life that's in line with what's most meaningful for you, it's not like all the suffering is going to go away. But there's a whole lot more life there, a whole lot more meaning there that kind of makes the suffering sort of worth it in some way.
I imagine that when people are at their lowest and they're lacking imagination for their own best life, that even answering that question is difficult. Well, I don't know. I just feel awful. I can't even get out of bed. How would I know what my best life is? So
absolutely,
how do you get them to that next point?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that that I will do when I'm talking about this idea in ACT, we call this values. So values are kind of what I describe it as. Values are how you're living when you're living a meaningful life. They're not your beliefs. They're not your morals. They're like ways of living in the world. And everybody is valuing something right now. Like Scott, you're valuing something by being here. I'm valuing something by being here. So if somebody is at a place where they're so shut down that they don't know what they would choose to value, that's okay. So let's start with, what are you valuing? So, so right now, you're valuing getting rid of your pain. Okay. Okay. And if you got to choose from absolutely everything in the world, is that what you would choose to make most important? Or is there something else that might provide more meaning for you?
What was the answer?
That's so helpful.
Isn't it? I know.
I'm stealing that. I'll quote you when I talk to people about it.
What did you decide ultimately what your values were? What did you decide to step into when you made it through each of those doors? Did you just say, I'm going to be the curator of awesomeness? Or was that after you just took one tiny step, did it, wrote things on little cards, scribbled shit, got further and further into who you are today?
Yeah. That's funny you mentioned curator of awesomeness. That's what my title.
I love it.
Because I got laid off. The reason my wife and I ended up here in Portland is I got a job at a design agency, and then through their own problems financially, I got laid off like 7 months later, and I found myself unemployed, the breadwinner of a family of 4. And I was like, I need to come up with some kind of title. What do I do? And I just started putting that as a joke. And then I started getting in, like now I get introduced that way, which is great. Which, and this is what I responded to you, because you were like, are you a pastor? And I was like, I'm not a pastor. But I was like, I am a curator. And curate is an old term for the priest who is in the midst of the community, who ran the rituals, births, deaths, marriages, and then kind of the seasonal year, and they were the one who kind of maintained those rituals. And so I was like, ooh, I resonate with that.
Wow.
The curator, and then awesomeness is, and so tied in with wonder, which is what I want to do. So my pivots are, nothing's going to change, is unknowing is a doorway to wonder. So the thing that's happening is like your tool of familiarity.
That almost just made me cry.
Just
now.
Your familiarity tool is getting in the way. You're like, I know everything about my life. Nothing's new. My spouse is boring. I'm boring. Nothing's new. And it's the moment you just start asking yourself, what don't I know? Just ask yourself that question. It opens up all this possibility. And so wonders are real. I run through this thing about wonder. And that was my own, like, paying attention to my narratives and my self-talk and going, when do you break out of narratives? You break you break out when you're like living in the moment, when you're really there. And Joseph Campbell, it's a paraphrasing of him, because I think people want to know what the meaning of life is, and that's not really what they're looking for. What they're really looking for is the rapturous experience of being alive. So the meaning of life is a knowing answer. Yeah. The rapturous experience of being alive is a wonder experience.
I love the way that in your show you talk about wonder and present moment, and you list off these things that are the things that you just love, and you talk about like rolled up socks, right, and the smell of low tide. And I was telling Jenna, I've got a friend who I say that she appreciates the B side of the album. You know, like if she were to go to some amazing destination with a huge, someplace in, Paris or something, everyone else is taking pictures of that. And she's down with her phone taking a picture of a little flower that's grown through the cracks in the sidewalk and just being like, my God, that is so cool. And that sort of attention to the wonder in the mundane, that it's like words like meaning and value and purpose are often, they're so important, but the word makes it sound so grand and so distant. So like someday I'll get to like my life's meaning or my life's purpose. And when I know people who are living in it, it's like the moment to moment stuff that it's like, no, this is the shit.
Yeah.
This is it right
here.
here.
This is rapturous. I love that word because I think people want to imagine like Roman theater and lions and big circusy things happening with rapturous. And in fact, like, it is about how light falls.
Yeah.
It is something so quiet sometimes.
Yeah.
But what I want to ask is, I have talked with so many people who, when they're in a really depressed phase, when they're not able to actually cope with what's going on in their life, they lose those moments, those tiny things that build our lives, that thread them together. They lose the ability to see them.
That's it. They don't lose them. They lose the ability to see them. And so it's like Scott has this image in his talk, or talks about this idea of being in a dark sky reserve. And it's this idea that when the suffering of life comes upon us and it obscures our ability to see the wonder that is this infinite possibility that's above us, all of that is still there all of the time. And it's my job as a therapist or as somebody who loves that person who is in that place of darkness and suffering to maybe help them see the possibility that that wondrous expanse is still above them. But it's not. So many times when we get into those dark places, we buy that thought, it's always going to be like this, and everything is always black. And it is black for you. It absolutely is. And it is also true that if you are able to have another perspective, that vast expanse is still out there too.
Yeah. That's great. I describe depression, and I know depression is an interesting animal because it can be a real just your chemicals to experiential, but depression is the ultimate disconnection from all of your emotions. It's
Absolutely.
So it's not that you don't feel sadness, you're just like not even connected to sadness at all. You're just like,
it's like a dull.
Just wake up and you're like, I don't think there's nothing for me today. So because when you speak about things, people come, and I'm just a person who's gone to therapy, but the thing that I've been telling people, a couple people contacted me through Instagram, and I was saying my practice has been to really get into my body, because I want to try to figure it out with my mind, and that's not ever the solution. So when I travel, and say I do 3 shows in a row, I get back, and I've got 3 kids, so there's a lot going on. But the night I get back, I'm usually okay. The next day, I'm really tired. The next day, I'm depressed. And I know that day, like, and maybe even for a couple days, like, don't make any life decisions. Don't have to, like, do a lot of things. And I do things like I go swim laps, or go on a walk, or I eat some nachos, because nachos are a doorway to God. And I
preach it.
Or I'll watch something, or I'll hold my baby, or it's all very like physical things, because my mind is a piece of shit at that time. It's just like, you suck and nothing's gonna work out and no work's ever gonna. It's just saying all this stuff, or it's like, it's all over, whatever. So it's like getting into that physicality, really.
Because life only happens in this moment. And if you're experiencing your 5 senses, those only occur in this moment. And so it's that's one thing I'll talk with my clients about is like, hey, if you are able to be in your body and experience your 5 senses, that's the quickest way to get back into life. Everything up in your head is virtual reality.
Totally.
One of the things that I really appreciated, first of all, that you came up with the curator of awesomeness at the time when you were like unemployed and felt dejected, and now you've become pretty cool.
Stamps.
Pretty cool. I think we should all do that. Come up with our titles at our lowest point, And secondly, when you go out and you're speaking to young people, they don't have this breadth of experience that you do in terms of, oh, all right, I've been through this enough times to know that on my 3rd day, I'm always trashed. So when they begin to feel this disconnectedness, they think it's real. And like what I see is like the increase in the teen suicide rate and for young people is that the lack of knowing, the lack of understanding their body, and that, oh, this is familiar. I've been through that before. I'm going to get through it. So how do you speak to that?
that specific reason is because you suck and are ugly. My pivot to that is I got to move from comparison to contribution. Because what you suck and are ugly is like you're not good enough. Other people are getting there. You have something missing out, and it's a very comparison thing. And we are in this. I call it a massive culture of comparison. And I walk through social media because I was like, look, I get it. A lot of you are here because of social media. You follow me. But here's where it goes wrong. And I just kind of run through some funny scenarios. And it's like there's this curated reality, but our very messy, real, smelly, crowded reality can never accomplish that. And I'm to people listening, I'm making a motion of like swiping your hands on your phone. Yeah. When you do that habit every single day, all day long, you're backing up a narrative that says there's no real place for me to be successful as me in the world. Because you're just looking at somebody else's success, and you're not privy to their own like self-hatred and failures, and because they're presenting this curated reality. And so the move is you really have to go. And I got this from Rosemond and Tom Zander. I can't remember his name. They wrote this book called The Art of Possibility. But one of them is just say, like, I am a contribution. And that really helped me to go, I need to move from comparison to contribution. So what is – and what I say contribution is it can be products, but I think that's the evidence of doing this work. It's more of like, what do you love and why, which is we call that gratitude. So it's like focusing on gratitude, but also like what do you love and why, and really getting into the nitty gritties of that, and getting really specific, and then allow your life to be that kind of contribute to that every day. Wow. And because some days contribution means like walking up the stairs endlessly with my 1-year-old because that's his greatest thing. Yeah. And the calculating self. The male self that wants to find his identity and his accomplishment screams while I'm doing that about how meaningless that is. Yeah, this is real talk. This is me to yesterday. For sure. Going, I have such great. I could be a real somebody. I have something to give, and I'm stuck in this house. Helping this baby up the stairs. Do you understand? Like that. Yeah. That is the shouting in me.
The one of the developers of this therapy that Jenna and I work from, called Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, or ACT. His name's Steve Hayes, and he is famous for saying, I used to think that my mind was the most important part of my body until I realized who was telling me that.
It's actually a joke. By Emo Phillips. He stole it, by the way.
Stole it. So Emo Phillips has this joke.
That's a funny joke.
Emo Phillips has a joke that Steve Hayes sometimes tells.
That I retold.
Well, I was
Give credit where credit is due.
Thank you very much.
I was listening to Chris speak, and I was just thinking, like, one of the fascinating things is that those of us who have gone to therapy and love therapy and learned from our brilliant therapists, one of the things that I was struck by is, wow, your like knowledge, your self-awareness, what you've been through, your story is in fact its own brand of professionalism. Like you could be a therapist to other people, like a therapist for the masses. And I think that this experience base that we all carry is fascinating. And we've talked before about how important it is when therapists actually say, oh yeah, I've been through that. Like, oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yeah, let me tell you, you want to talk depression? Yeah. And I think that that's kind of what I'm struck by here. It's like, oh wow, you guys have these titles. You have your own self-made title, which I love. But really, we all have this degree of professionalism because we've experienced our own lives, right?
That's right.
And there isn't a single life that's not that important.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because so oftentimes I'll have clients who say, well, I mean, you went to school and you learned this. I've lived it. As though I couldn't have gone to school and learned about it and lived it.
Yeah. Right.
Like we're all in the soup.
Right. Exactly.
But to your point about Scott's knowledge base and his self-awareness, I'm sitting over here thinking like, man, this is so deep. Whoever's listening to this, people, if you're listening to this, listen twice, because he's the curator of awesomeness, but there's also like your philosopher.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, Thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to do it. Like
we all are,
like
right?
I'm figuring out how to. The gift I can give to my children is to get healthier, and be around for them. Mm-hmm. So I have. Yeah, they're frightening conversations. They're not that scary to me. I just go, oh, something's just really loud and scary because something's not working right now, and I need to understand. I'm learning how to do this kind of like consistent travel, and there's a real physical side to it.
That's right.
Sitting in planes, and I've just noticed like I immediately just put my headphones in like the whole day I'm traveling, just because I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. It's not even I don't want to talk to people. I'm just tired of people's dumb conversations. and it's just like, I just have to listen to this all day? I don't want to listen to this.
Just because you bought seat 2B?
Yeah.
Jeez.
What
they do to deserve that?
So, but yeah, I think I want to make it, and I want to be healthy, and so I'm having to dive into these things. And I know there's my tendency to numb is there too, and I'm just trying to be aware of that. But I appreciate that. It's good. It makes me think I'm on a right track.
No doubt.
And then I will, not to get back to like my stuff, but I did. You asked me about the 3 things. The one that's like dying's better than living. And this is where I think the kind of culmination of mental health and spirituality come together is, you got to let it die so something new can come about. That's what you're really looking for. Like something's not working, and that needs to die. And in any kind of wisdom, spiritual language, we say, something needs to die so then a resurrection can happen.
Yeah.
So something new can come about, and you can't. The only way to go through that is you have to let this thing die. And I say at the end, I was like, I had to let a dream die, which is knowing who I wanted to be at 18, to get to the deeper desire, which was now I'm being asked if I want to go down this route.
It's also fascinating, though, Scott, that letting that dream die gave birth to this creation of who you are today. You know, like, yes, let's let all those dreams die that don't serve us.
Yeah, and I think that's what we all, I know it's really typical to have kind of like the midlife, I thought my life would be different. I thought I would be different. The person I thought I would be, I'm not that person. And you really have to learn how to say yes to the person you are, but also go, but hey, there was this desire that's been given to you. What I propose in the show is like, and I don't ask people to sign up on board to believe in a God. I just say, if really this is a conversation with existence, and if you want to give a name to the giver of that existence, you can. So this is a conversation with the giver of our existence, which could be just happenstance, or it could be some divine. I think I even say if it is anything, it's love. And that God is love, or it's love is giving you this thing. And so, because Jenna, you said something earlier that I just had a conversation with somebody, because I had spoke at this college last week, and I was like, do you guys know what this is about? They didn't. And I was like, oh, we're having a conversation about suicide tonight. But I was like, it's not about the act of suicide. It's about how do you get to the spot where you're like, I wish that bus would hit me. It's like the death by paper cuts. It's like, what's all the little things that just led you to a spot when you get there? And that's been my experience, is just like, it's these little things that then get you to this kind of crisis place.
Yeah.
And going, well, and this show is a lot of things. It's like a storytelling show. It's like a mental health TED Talk. But it's also a way to go, like, I want you to develop practices.
Yeah.
Like, we need practices, spiritual practices, mental health practices in our modern life. And at the end, when I talk to people, I'm like, these are not things I've mastered, because I leave the 3 pivots up there.
Yeah.
I'm like, these are my weekly practices that I still do.
I think they're daily. When you're
daily.
doing that thing with your baby, it's its own wild practice, right? It's that practice towards back in your body and what you're actually doing in that moment that's also beautiful, rapturous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that one specifically, because my wife and I are both self-employed. Our kids go to part-time school, and then we have a 1-year-old baby around. Like, every day is like, I need more time to work. And so nothing's going to change. I'm like, yeah, it is. In like 2 years, this will be dramatically different. It's just really tough right now. Like year one is just hard.
Yeah.
And then, well, what is the ways that I can contribute in small ways? And then, what I thought life would be. But here's what it is. So this is where I have to engage all this stuff. Yeah.
And one of the things I might think of is whether you're, talking to that group of students or up giving your show or you're walking your baby, my guess is that what is meaningful for you, like what you are trying to bring to each of those situations, like maybe there's some consistency there. Like maybe the guy that you want to be as you're giving whatever it is you want to give during your show is the same thing you're wanting to be as you're helping your baby up those stairs. And I think if we can help people kind of connect to that idea that there is meaning and a consistency in what I call values across these different kind of activities that we can do with our life, then there doesn't have to be so much of this conflict of, yeah, but I'm supposed to be doing this other thing because that's the thing that has more meaning in it.
Right.
Like you bring meaning to whatever it is that you're doing.
That's right.
You get to choose what meaning it is.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think we could talk to you for 3 hours, but, there's a 1-year-old probably who would like your attention as well.
I'm fine.
There's a guy in 2B who wants to talk to somebody.
No doubt. Scott, I can't wait to see one of your shows. So how do people follow you and come learn more about your work?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram.
Okay. Still Scott the Painter?
Scott the Painter.
Okay.
And I post all the Say Yes shows and just anything else I'm doing.
Fantastic.
Through that. And I do have a show in May here in Portland again. And then Seattle and some Midwest states, doing a run of shows in Canada and Calgary in the fall, which is fun at a theater.
Oh, the Canadians will love
So I'll
you.
say I've been to one, and I brought my 14-year-old, and he had a blast too. So
That's fantastic.
It was great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
coming in.
Thanks for having me.
coming.
Yeah, it was really wonderful.